All right, welcome back, everybody. I am so excited about this opportunity in this episode here. We are interviewing Paul Allen, founder of CitizenPortal.ai, actually founder of Ancestry.com back in the day. When did you found that, Paul? Was that back in the 1900s?
It was 28 years ago, if you can believe it.
Wow, goodness gracious. And Carlos Packard, and I know you're on location with partnerships and publishing with CitizenPortal.ai. Carlos, I want to go to you first because I know you're on location. Tell us where you are and give a little bit of introduction as to what we're going to be talking about today.
Well, I'm here in Las Vegas at Freedom Fest, and it's noisy. I came out into the hallway here so you could possibly hear me, and I can hear myself think and talk. But anyway, it's a madhouse here. Kennedy just from Daily Wire just hit the stage, and it got very noisy, so I left so I could do this. But a lot of people here. Ice-T is here. Rob Snyder was here last night. And they're having a lot of fun. Anyway, just a little bit of my background with both you and Paul Allen. I started with Paul Allen, some 30 years ago, doing, it was called Infobases Inc. And we were creating these huge electronic libraries that people could use to research and put together, their ideas and whatnot. And from there, Paul went on to found, as you were just saying, Ancestry.com. I've had quite a bit of involvement with that company also. But Paul has stayed on the cutting edge of technology, using this type of technology for bringing out the good and truth and whatnot. And with you, 15 years ago, I was in the middle of publishing some books that I was able to get Glenn Beck to forward and promote, and some software using the same tools that Paul had developed years before. And then just ended up meeting with you to help us get this out there in DC, and it was a lot of fun. And I just figured, when I came on with Paul a few weeks ago, you were one of the first minds that came to my mind of somebody that could help promote this and help move this along, what we're trying to do with Citizen Portal.
Yeah, I love it. And when I first met you, I think one of the products you had was the Constitution Coach, and it was a CD-ROM. As CD-ROMs were going away and everything's going to the cloud, I remember that at the time going, okay, this is going to be a great tool, but man, what a phenomenal library, and to be able to search that. And I actually was going to find one. I still have a small box of a few left over, but what a phenomenal tool.
Sure.
Now, when you said that you were involved with Citizen Portal, I was like, oh, I remember this however many months ago, Paul, you were on with Glenn Beck. And that was when I first heard about it. And I said, that's when I first signed up with it and got under the hood and started playing with it a little bit. And but Carlos, well, if you want, we can let you go if you want to get back to that show, because I know that it's a little bit noisy, a little bit crazy. You've got a lot to do to represent Citizen Portal to those that are desiring freedom at the Freedom Fest.
Yes.
So
Sounds good. I'll leave you two to it. Have fun.
Awesome. God bless, Carlos.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carlos.
All right, Paul. So you're a few years ago, and you're this database tech guy and some emerging AI, and we'll get into pure AI, the ethical side of AI in just a moment. But what are you noticing? What is this? Because this is before this rise and awakening that we've seen lately, where people want to go to school board meetings and go and speak out. What are you seeing that you said, you know what, I wish we had a portal. I wish we had eyes in. Tell me that story. How did this originate for you?
Well, I loved American history in high school. I took pre-AP U.S. history and AP history. I got a 5 on the AP history exam. It was my favorite subject. And then I started a university studies in political science and international relations. I ended up majoring in Russian, and I got to study communism and Pravda. I used to read copies of Pravda and understand that the Politburo, this small group of communist leaders, controlled this vast country, the largest geographic country on earth, with massive mineral and resources. and they controlled the entire country. Like there was no liberty and freedom. And I admired Andrei Sakharov and Solzhenitsyn, and of course Dostoevsky and Tolstoy are the two greatest authors, arguably, of all time. But I loved the Russian culture and history, but I loved the contrast between what we have in terms of freedom and liberty and the founders' articulation of our God-given inalienable rights versus
Thank you.
an atheistic, totalitarian, authoritarian society where people had no freedom. And I just saw a tweet from a quote from Solzhenitsyn this morning that said, "Why did Russian dissidents risk their life to publish and sell and distribute books that were banned by the Russians, by the Soviet Union?"
Yeah.
It's because truth is so valuable.
Yes.
So I just think that one reason I'm so passionate about this is that you look at the contrasts between America in the 18th and 19th and 20th century and the rest of the world. It was literally our freedoms, and local government, state government, like the federal government has started usurping since the late 1880s. I read a book called Federal Usurpation by Franklin Pierce in 1908.
Wow.
In 1908, it documented the usurpation of the federal government with the Department of Commerce and the General Welfare Clause and the Commerce Clause. And it's like, that was 1908 before 1913.
Yes, I was just going to say the worst year in America, 1913. So
I know, but this was before that, and the federal government was already usurping a lot of powers that should have been reserved to the states and the people. And so freedom has been, and liberty have been eroded. If you think about licensing and regulation at the state and federal level, it's like, I mean, farmers, are they really free to grow crops and sell? And like, no, many cases, I just saw in Missouri where I live, I moved to Missouri in 2020. There's a farmer who is like on video ranting about how he cannot sell pickles in a jar in Missouri from his own farm. Like there's green beans and pickles licensing requirements or regulations that don't allow him to sell that at a local farmer's market.
Land of the free. Right? Exactly. We have a free market system.
We have lost most of our free market economic system. Think about Fannie and Freddie and the housing market.
Yeah.
Think about Federal Reserve and the banking industry.
Yeah.
Local community banks. I have a friend who's a billionaire. He tried to start a community bank in Utah, and the FDIC would not allow him to start a community bank because after the 2008 crisis, thousands of local banks were being shut down, and he was forced by the federal government to buy a failing bank rather than start a clean bank with a clean balance sheet. Wow. It took 2 years for him to turn that failed bank into a successful bank. Now he's got lots of branches and huge deposits, but that's not freedom to have a federal deposit insurance corporation or the banking regulators to say, you cannot start a bank in your own community.
Yeah. There's a video, I think is a 60 Minutes interview with Reagan, and he said, well, fascism, that's where you own it, but the government regulates it, or controls it through regulation and all that. Is that how Old Glory Bank really survived or grew? Because they bought a bank, was it Oklahoma? I think it is. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Old Glory Bank, but
I'm not.
But they've done a great job with marketing because Ben Carson, John Rich, and Larry and a bunch of others are involved. But anyways, you said the Commerce Clause. That's one of those. Is it to keep it regular, or is it because, oh, you're in commerce, I can regulate you? There's that whole distinction. And I think that for people to get engaged and look through a lens of analysis, and this is where I think the power of AI, this is where I see a lot of potential in what you're doing. Meaning, it's like we're supposed to have a constitutional republic, a constitutionally limited government. The Constitution grants the government its rights. It tells it what it can and cannot do. But how are the people supposed to know and recognize if the government is acting outside its granted authority if we, the people, aren't reading the Constitution and aren't looking through that lens? So a lot of this onus is on us, and you're providing a tool to eliminate a lot of excuses for people to dig in and to monitor and watch their government themselves.
It is our responsibility
Yeah.
to oversee the people that we elect to represent us,
Mhm.
because they're really not representing the people. They're representing big donors or
Right.
corporations who have lobbyists. There have
Yep.
been studies that show that when citizens want a policy to be implemented, it's rarely implemented. When the large corporations and donors want something, they almost always get it. And they're buying party influence from both parties with massive donations. I mean, a lot of the sophisticated political operatives will donate millions of dollars to the Republicans, millions of dollars to the Democrats. They've got lobbyists working on both sides. And
Mhm.
so really there's an opportunity, kind of an unprecedented opportunity. Now, let me just kind of step back. When I think about doing genealogy research in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, it was extremely time consuming and expensive. It almost always required travel. And as billions of records started being digitized and indexed and a powerful search engine emerged,
Mhm.
it literally became 1,000 times easier to do genealogy than it was before.
Right.
And that's why 100 million plus people around the world have built a very robust family tree. Now AI is hinting at, oh, this is your great great grandmother. These might be her parents. And AI will say, here's some records. You should look at them. And then if they're relevant, and if you think that does represent your family, you've now extended your family tree. The same dynamic can now be brought to play for American citizens who are busy.
Mhm.
Only, I think, half the country makes more than $15 an hour as a wage. And so there's a lot of shrinking of the middle class. Takes two wage earners generally to have a household now.
Right.
And that's a big change from the 60s and 50s.
Mhm.
And so we have these headwinds. But imagine not only a Citizen Portal AI platform like today that has a search engine and some GPTs, and it requires you to think of, what am I looking for? And
Right.
then I go find it. Guess what's coming, Jason? And I can't tell you how excited I am about this. And it's probably just days away.
Awesome.
There's going to be an algorithmic feed that actually you get to control the algorithm. But what it will do is it will take all the massive amounts of local, state, and federal content that's generated by your government and by your actual representatives in those government bodies. It will ingest all of that, slice it into clips, or AI summarize it, and then present to you in a feed, kind of like a Facebook feed or a
Right.
TikTok feed. Not only, here's a clip that's relevant to you, Jason. Where do you live? What city do you live in?
I'm in Illinois, in the
Okay,
red part of the state that subsidizes Chicago. So I'm not part of that, but
okay. So
yeah.
I won't necessarily require you to tell me your city, but you're in a city, you're in a county, you're in a state, and then you're a citizen of the United States. So you've probably got 12 to 13 elected officials that supposedly represent you. It could be
Right.
the city council, could be the
Mhm.
county commissioners, the state house members, the state senate, and then of course the federal officials that you voted for, or maybe you didn't vote for, but they still represent you. It's extraordinarily complex, our government, our
Mhm.
series of governments, and the jurisdictions and the overlap and the tension. And the founders created the checks and balances and the distribution of powers intentionally
Right.
to make it so that no small faction, or sorry, no majority faction could control and become a dictator over the rest, over the minorities. And so there's all these kind of, some people think, well, Premier Xi in China has an advantage over our leaders because he can just decide at a central level, and
Yeah.
then everybody has to fall in line. Okay, that is efficient, but who wants to live in a country that's controlled by one person or a small group of people? We
Right.
all should have freedom and liberty because God gave it to us.
Right. Our
So
constitutional republic respects the rights of the individual. A democracy, however, which we are not, is the I don't get my rights from the majority of voters. My rights come from God, and our elected representatives are restrained by the Constitution, supposedly.
that is exactly how it was intended to be.
Right.
There were limited enumerated powers. I think 19 enumerated powers to the federal government. And the rest, as the 10th Amendment makes clear, are
Right.
reserved to the states and the people. Okay, so, but we've been asleep at the wheel, and the
Mhm.
demise of the newspaper industry over the past 30 years, they just cannot afford to send journalists to local and state meetings. There's a huge decrease in good journalistic coverage.
Right.
And if you think about the fourth estate historically has been the free press has been the greatest check and balance on the abusing powers of government leaders. And
Mhm.
if you think about Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall and that political machine that controlled New York for decades, or the senator of New York who became the governor, who came up with the phrase "to the victor goes the spoils"
Right.
in the 1830s. He was indicating that if you win an election, your cronies should get their share.
Right.
Like, to the victor of an election in the United States go the spoils, meaning all my supporters get contracts or kickbacks or whatever. I mean,
Yes.
there was a lot of corruption. But guess what took down Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall? An artist, Ogden Nash, who was publishing cartoons about corruption in Harper's Weekly.
Hmm.
That journalistic tradition of muckraking and whistleblowing and finding corruption, it kept our country fairly uncorrupt for, there were always chapters, but
Right.
there was that power. That is gone.
Yeah.
That powerful free press.
Right. Especially the local news outside of the big cities are too big to cover all the stuff that's going on, and medium and small cities it's not happening because I heard you in another interview talk about the budget or the profit, how drastically reduced it is. They
Oh,
just can't.
it's completely diminished. I think 80% decrease in newspaper revenue over the past 15 years. Okay, so they can't afford it.
Right.
What has to happen then is databases need to be created, and that's what Citizen Portal is doing, of every major set of government content, from meeting transcriptions to official minutes to bills to proposals to city budgets to state. Every single document that is important ought to be ingested in the system and keyword searchable. But
Right.
more importantly, since we're all used to feeds,
Mhm.
since Facebook came out with their feed and TikTok has taken over the world with its very powerful algorithmic feed, I'm not a fan of how they are taking over the minds of all the young people who get their news from TikTok, because it's not trustworthy. It's
Right.
it's quite scary, and it disrespects Western values and our civilizational traditions, and it makes us to be the bad guys in almost every scenario. And so young people are not proud of being American citizens. They won't
Right.
go to war, and there's reasons why. Obviously, the military-industrial complex is a big problem. But imagine all the databases
Yeah.
being crawled every day, and then an algorithmic feed, like I said, that you control, shows you what you care about at the school board level. If you have 3 topics that you want to monitor every time your school board agenda or a school board meeting covers that topic, it'll show you that clip. And here's what it will do, and I'm so excited about this, Jason. It'll explain, why am I seeing this, and do I want to see more or less of this kind of content? So it'll explain why you're seeing that in your feed, and you'll be able to dial up and down whatever it is. Then after the clip, it'll show you, what can I do as a citizen to have an impact on this issue? We're going to try to find dozens of actions that citizens can take. Sometimes it's calling your representative and weighing in favor of a proposal or against a proposal. Sometimes it's joining a Facebook group, attending a meeting, signing a petition. There are dozens of actions we can take. So every time we see content, we should do something about it if it matters. And that actionability, the relevance and the
Yes.
actionability, is the future of CitizenPortal.ai. And we want millions of people to be empowered in a few minutes a day to become active and engaged citizens that make a difference collectively and get our government going in the direction that we want.
Yeah, you are completely removing so many excuses, and a lot of excuses people have had is this biased media. The people who are covering these things, how do we trust what is their interpretation about what happened at that meeting? A meeting's 3 hours long, and and I'm going to tell you what that meeting was in 30 seconds, and you're going to trust me and don't go look for yourself. You're kind of removing that, and also the way the algorithm. And I've heard a lot of these discussions lately about, I think, wasn't it even Elon Musk was talking about this need to open source the algorithm so you can control your own feed on YouTube and all these other platforms, so you can decide, as opposed to just trusting. Because you talked about TikTok and people being educated with these crazy videos and stuff. There's always going to be crazy people making crazy videos, but the problem really is that algorithm. Why are they serving that one up to me? What rabbit hole do they want me to go to? What's the I want to control my own algorithm. The fact that you're doing that, you are ahead of the curve. I love that. And
Well,
really it is about original source documents. I want to see exactly what they said, not what somebody else told me they said.
exactly. And it's not just enough to be aware of current events.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have a deep understanding of American history and the
Yes.
Constitution. And the amendment process of the Constitution is still there. It's a living Constitution. If we
Mm-hmm.
want to change, don't do it through usurpation. Do
Right.
it through an amendment process, which is really hard to do. But we shouldn't just let the government decide to start doing things that are extra constitutional. And of course, that's been happening for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So there is an opportunity in history,
Yeah.
given the power of technology and AI, to give us the ability to 1,000 times easier than before to be a good citizen, to
Yeah.
be active, informed, and engaged. It's not enough to vote every 2 years or every 4 years. That's not
And
enough.
hope for the best. Boy,
And
this
hope for the
time.
best. Yeah, it's way more important if we could get a few million of us
Yes.
that are using this slicing and dicing and summarization capability of AI and the relevancy explanation and the actionability. And so in concert, I mean, the Boston Tea Party and the American Revolution wasn't a huge percentage of the population.
Right.
Thomas Paine, Common Sense, got a lot of people supporting it over time, but it wasn't that many that were willing to risk their own life
Right.
and fortune to get this thing going. And I think it's exciting. There's so many people waking up to the fact that you can't trust the media because there's corporations on the left side and on the right side that own and control the media. You
Right.
can't trust social media because of the algorithms.
Yeah.
So let's go get all the original source documents throughout history. Let's get the current events and all the government bills, proposals, and budgets.
Yes.
And let's have AI help us understand it. And is it in harmony with the Constitution and with is it likely to bring a good outcome or a bad outcome?
Right.
Think about the billions of dollars on infrastructure spending that build things or try to fund things that never really get built,
Mm-hmm.
that never really move the needle on any good being done. And people get away with that all the time. They vote for something, but then they're not held accountable to it. I think AI has the potential to help us become super citizens that are really informed and engaged. And some of the actions you'll take is to deeply understand an issue and a policy and why it won't work or why it will work, and then to become more effective in championing it and getting a lot of grassroots support. I know you do a lot with grassroots.
Mm-hmm.
The grassroots can be strengthened and fertilized by AI, just like the bad fruit of the trees that we've seen are being strengthened. Like the bad business models that aim to sell your time and attention to the highest bidder,
Mm-hmm.
those advertising business models are not leading to your personal well-being
Right.
or to societal health. We're seeing the fruits of bad business models and bad algorithms.
Yeah.
Now it's time to shift the tide, to plant a new one, and to see how together it can actually strengthen society, strengthen families, strengthen faith, strengthen community, help us get back to that constitutional republic that our framers gave us.
Amen. So let's talk about AI for just a moment, because in the last several months, there's been a lot of talk about this AI and the direction it's going and this, what is artificial general intelligence. And in fact, last year, I had an experience where I actually had ChatGPT apologize to me. I was creating what I call the library of solutions because I want a place for people to go to say, here's all the ways to address different problems we face. I'm doing a little research on flat tax. So I asked ChatGPT, I said, give me the principles behind the flat tax. And it had all this stuff and some commentary. And then at the bottom, it talked about how unfair it was. And because it had a progressive, I was like, wait a minute. And so I responded back. And then 2 responses later, it said, I apologize. I actually had all the screenshots for that. But how is that different from what you are building? Because it seems like this is a AI search engine, which is looking at original source material. So it's not making anything up. Tell me the
That
difference.
is exactly what we're aiming to do. It's something called retrieval augmented generation. So what you're experiencing with ChatGPT is pure generative AI. And it actually doesn't know, it's not conscious, it's not sentient, it doesn't know what's true. It is a mathematical probability engine that knows all the words that could ever be written or spoken in what order they tend to appear statistically in all the training data sets they've had. So think about a machine that can generate words, and it will start to generate a phrase, and you can tell that it doesn't instantly produce the entire string. It starts to produce content, one word and one phrase after another, and it's using a statistical probability engine to decide which path to go next. It's not deterministic, meaning it won't give you the same answer twice ever, but it starts to use words, and as other words follow, it predicts what other words can follow that, and pretty soon it's got sentences and paragraphs, and it never will apologize because it knows or feels something. The apology is simply one of hundreds or thousands of prompts that the team around ChatGPT has created. It's a set of rules on how it should interact with its users.
Right.
And so they can fine tune it. They can have all kinds of rules and heuristics. But our goal, Jason, as you pointed out, is to take keyword search of all the most important documents in American history and all the government publishings today, and also vector database semantic searching of those same things. So you got keyword searching, which everybody's been doing for years, but then you've got meaning search. So it's like you take a keyword search and you add a thesaurus to it, and it's like all the different ways that a concept can be described. Now you're getting hits on all of that. What we then do is combine with ChatGPT so that when you ask a question like, okay, Citizen Portal, what has been said in the United States Congress in congressional hearings in the past 4 years about lithium supplies and our global supply chain problems with China and Africa? Okay, it won't make up a probabilistic answer, just gobbledygook that may or may not be true. It'll go search through all the words and phrases relating to lithium, China, and Africa in congressional hearings and in the Congressional Research Service's 11,000 published reports, a whole bunch of nonpartisan PhDs that are providing really good answers to members of Congress. It'll go through all of that content, extract the best answers, and then present it to you with a little bit of introduction and explanation. So it's not making up the quotes, it's finding the quotes and then helping you navigate the quotes in a timeline format.
Right.
Right.
That is awesome. Because I dug into the paid side and set up, I think you offer 3 alerts or something like that to start with. And so I filled out 2 of them. And so I want to look for Second Amendment issues, and even I did a search on the flat tax. Is anybody talking about this as a solution? I mean, we can 73,000 pages of tax code and manipulation. We could just go flat tax. So I have a focus on solutions. I want to, yes, focus on solutions, but then the next piece of that is calls to action. Tell me more about the calls. How is that generated?
We are starting to work with our tens of thousands of users right now, who are many of them grassroots activists. They want to become informed, they want to become engaged. And so we're running surveys to find out, when you learn something about what's going on in your school board, what are the actions you can take? So we will listen, take input from, and we'll build a taxonomy of actions you could take. Then the AI will predict, based on the content clip you're seeing, what is the most likely set of actions that someone could take or would take.
Right.
So it might be 1, 2, 3, 5. It might be show me every action I could take, and then you get to pick which one. So we're not trying to guide your behavior. We're just trying to predict what behavior would be most effective for a state legislature bill that you disagree with, or for a bill that you love and you know it will make a positive impact. How do you then promote that? And so we'll be interacting with our users. We'll be interacting with nonprofits and all kinds of organizations to try to come up with that full set of actions. And then it'll be fast and easy to take many of those actions. Some actions require deeper research, maybe publishing an article or an op-ed. That might take you some time. We'll provide some tools to help you with that. But yeah, I'm very excited that in the coming years, millions and millions of citizens can just sign up for a feed, get local, state, and federal content that's relevant to them, and know what actions they can take. And then when we start to coordinate those actions, I believe that government of the people, by the people, and for the people has not been lost forever.
Right.
I think we can reclaim it with the power of super intelligence and technology in our hands, guided and controlled by us. I don't believe that artificial general intelligence will ever become sentient and conscious and that they should have human rights and all that stuff. I think it's bits and bytes and digital hardware and, silicon and all the amazing, miraculous technological innovations that I think have been inspired by our creator to give us a sense of like, how can you create more and create abundance? And so I believe that just as the founders were inspired to do what they did, I think that many inventors and entrepreneurs have been inspired. But the tools that emerge can be used for good or for ill. And there are significant existential threats with bad actors using AI for military purposes or other purposes. But at the same time, if enough good people use it in good ways to personalize our education, to help us be better, successful in our careers, to deepen our faith, to increase our civic engagement, to strengthen our friendships and our family ties, AI can guide us in all of those ways as a tool if we use it as in those ways. So I'm super optimistic. While I keep eyes wide open about the potential risks, I'm focused on what good can be done with these tools.
Yeah, and again, the common theme is you're eliminating people's excuses. I do what I call the Save America training camp, where I'm training people on how to amplify their voice. To first off, it's about their own perceptions and understanding. It's understanding that we don't have constitutional rights; we have constitutional protections. We have natural God-given rights. Those kind of perceptions and understandings are so important to begin to analyze and look through that lens of what is our government doing, and then to grow your political influence. I had a good friend who's in Sarasota County, Florida, and he said he was working on a local issue, and one of the county commissioners told him, you know what, I appreciate this issue, but until you have 1,000 people here, we're probably not going to listen to you. So it's really about that. I have a dear friend in Texas, one example here, and I know that I'm going to tell her more about this in the coming days, because she has done a phenomenal job and a deep dive on education and Common Core back in the day. And now it's exposing the problems of the way they are pitching school choice. And so she is going to school board meetings and the Texas Education Agency and all of this. And for her to be able to do this kind of research, to dig into who are the vendors in these contracts that are getting these no bid contracts and getting all the to be able to track that and set up that algorithm and that search, I think would be a phenomenal tool. Do you have any other examples of how people have used this?
Well, we've seen people using it to reverse city council decisions because a contractor lied to them a month ago and they found a clip from the previous meeting. And after the vote went forward in favor of the contractor, the clip was shared and everyone on the city council and the mayor realized they had been lied to. It was proved by the words of the contractor from a previous meeting. But you forget, I mean, if you have a meeting once a month that's 3 hours long, you don't have a perfect recall of everything that was said last month or a year ago. So the ability to have perfect recall of what was written, what was said, that's important. I could give you other examples, but there's two invitations I'd like to extend to anyone who's listening, Jason. One of them is we all need wise people who've studied issues for years or decades. I mean, I look up to David Barton from Wall Builders, and he's been studying the writings of the founders for decades. I met him in the 90s. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so, and then Glenn Beck has been kind of a watchman on the tower for decades, warning us about things. And there are many other inspirational figures that are deep thinkers and writers. And imagine this, any thought leader, anyone who's done their homework, can now take their perspective and add what we call an AI lens to filter or to highlight things that they would love other citizens to have access to. So as the Citizen Portal feed starts to reach millions of people, Jason Hoyt could have his AI lens. It's as if you're reading 10 or 20,000 pages a day and highlighting the things that matter in the school board, city council, state, and federal meetings. You won't be doing that yourself, but you can train the AI to highlight the things that matter on the issues you care about most. And that highlight can show up in the feed. Okay, people could subscribe to the Jason Hoyt AI lens
Sure.
and then always have the benefit, and not just one, but 5 or 10 experts that you trust. And
Mhm.
now you've got the feed and you've got the raw material, but now you have a highlighter that says, this is important and here's why. Okay,
Right.
that's one thing. That's one invitation. If there are thought leaders out there who love the Constitution, who want to help protect freedom and liberty and help us create a prosperous future for our children and grandchildren, reach out to us at CitizenPortal.ai and let us know what your area of expertise is so that you can participate in creating those AI highlighter pens
Yeah.
that could be deployed for all the other users. Second invitation is that we actually have almost 2,000 investors in
Mm.
CitizenPortal.ai. And right now, people can invest and buy equity in this startup. We hope to have a lot of shareholders in this company who love freedom and want to protect our liberties. You can go to startengine.com/citizenportal and make an investment and become a shareholder in this company. In the early days of Ancestry, we had about 20 or 30 angel investors, including my high school English teacher and her
Mhm.
husband. And then we raised $75 million of venture capital. We lost control of that company. I didn't understand venture capital. And pretty soon there were 6 board members that were VCs. There were only 3 founders that were board members.
Mm.
And we lost control and we couldn't, end up promoting the mission that we really wanted, and became a big money making entity. And I lost all my shares in 2006 when a private equity company bought Ancestry. So I don't want that to happen again. So
Right.
Citizen Portal has a strategy to have a very robust cap table, to grow and to become a profitable company with lots and lots of shareholders. And we're very excited about the possibilities of building a very valuable company with lots of participants in that equity.
That is awesome. That is great. I had heard in another interview you're talking about other AIs, family. Is that, can you tell me about
We're,
the additional ones and even creator? I'm
yeah, there's a creator portal.ai that's coming.
Mhm.
There's a family portal.ai, a friend portal.ai. There will be education portal. We're doing health, finance, legal. In the next 2 years, we'll end up with 15 corporations
Mm.
that are all powered by the same technology and the same core team.
Yeah.
But then each entity will be able to raise some capital, grow, build a leadership team, partner with one of the world's largest companies in that market, and scale up. So we do think that Microsoft is worth trillions, Nvidia is worth trillions, Apple's
Right.
worth trillions, Microsoft worth trillions. It's actually hard for any entrepreneur to compete against those multi-trillion-dollar companies. However, AI kind of levels the playing field. And if we apply AI with our partnerships, there's a good chance that all of these 15 companies can do some remarkably good things to
Mhm.
strengthen families, to strengthen faith, to strengthen citizen engagement, and then to help you thrive at work, in your health, in your finance. And we just have a fantastic team. We're eager to collaborate, to partner, and then eventually have a publicly traded company. There's actually a new stock market being formed. I don't know if you've heard of the long-term stock exchange.
Mm.
It's raised $300 million. It was an idea from Eric Ries, the author of a very famous book called The Lean Startup. Eric Ries has probably influenced how technologists do what they do as much as any other author in the modern world. And now he's had this idea for a long-term stock exchange
Mm.
that rewards long-term investors and companies that have a mission and a vision and values that they don't want to compromise on. If you think about publicly traded companies, CEOs have enormous pressure to never miss their quarterly earnings number, and
Right.
CFOs are always tempted to cook the books or to slightly, uh, um, make a change so that we don't miss our numbers. Like I have a friend who was a Silicon Valley CFO for 40 years. 8 CEOs came to him at different times to try to get him to change the quarterly earnings numbers slightly. He refused every time. But there's a lot of pressure because if you miss your number by a penny,
Right.
your stock crashes. And so a lot of people will do mass layoffs a quarter or two in advance so they don't miss their numbers. And that's harmful for thousands of
Right.
families. So the long-term stock exchange is a really brilliant idea. And there are two companies listed on it right now, but they're dual listed on NASDAQ or NYSE. In the long term, we hope the long-term stock exchange allows a values-driven company like ours to go public, have public shareholders, but long-term investors
Yeah.
rewarding R&D and rewarding your vision and your mission, not just your profits.
Right. That's like the supply and demand. Why are they taking shortcuts to every quarter? It's because the investors are short-term investors, and that's what they're demanding it. So but if you attract long-term investors, look, guys, we're setting expectation here. It's long-term investing. We may invest in a quarter, it may kind of go down, but long-term, I like that. That's
It's a very exciting prospect. I
yeah,
can't guarantee that we'll end up being in that market, but
yeah,
it's appealing to me
right,
because I've seen good companies go public and go from good to bad very quickly.
yeah,
They want to be monopolies. They start to lobby. They start to participate in our regulatory capture,
yeah.
and they started out with good intentions.
I saw a recent interview that you had. You were talking. I apologize. I forget the name of the person or the test, but it was you said your strength was ideation,
Yeah.
and that sparked I remembered about 10 years ago. I wrote this deck up because I had this idea about a activist platform, and part of it was the idea of not just subscribing like podcasts to the talking heads, like I'm going to subscribe to this guy or this guy, but I'm going to subscribe to ideas and topics. And so every time you're scraping the internet, right? This is 10 years ago I wrote this. I'm fascinated by national reciprocity, let's say, for the Second Amendment. Just this. So anytime anybody on any podcast, any show, any news talks about it, I want to see it on my feed. Tell me what you are able to show on the feed. It's the when it's published on a .gov site, when it's over here, you're not scraping the local news, are you? Are you
No.
scraping blogs? And I mean, what's it limited to that you have today?
Well, the main thing we have is 1,000,000 hours of video footage from city, county, state, and federal meetings. We also have the 11,000 Congressional Research Service reports. We also keep our Supreme Court feed up to date. We're also doing the Federal Register, which is all the federal agencies have to publish their proposed rules in the Federal Register. It's like 100 pages a day of federal regulations and regulation proposals. That is so. Pretty soon it'll be budget data for every city, county, and state in the United States. It'll be all of the documents and all the transcripts. What you'll end up seeing on the feed is a summary or a clip that allows you to click through and go see the whole context or read the whole document.
Mhm.
So we don't believe in somehow representing what the official meeting was about.
Right.
We give you a summary or a chapterization of it, then you click through and you watch that 10-minute clip that you really care about. You can even then save the clip and share it on social media. So the tools will be very robust. The feed, I think, will, because we're so accustomed to scrolling. There's trillions of hours a year spent by humans scrolling.
Right.
And we don't love that. I prefer having people think
Yes.
and then ask and then receive, but we have to meet people where they are. Where they are is hours a day of scrolling on a feed. So how do we improve that feed? We explain why you're seeing this and tell you and let you say you want more or less like that. And then we explain, what can I do about this that will
Yes.
make my community better? So it's about relevancy, content, and actions I can take to improve my life or
Yep.
the life of those around me.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I've been really surprised how long form podcasts are so popular. And I've been I'll turn one on and be like, oh, that's 3.5 hours. Fine, okay, buckle up. I put it on playback speed of 1.75, and I'm doing what I
Well,
can. But watching other people have a conversation, it's like, how is that news? But I get a lot out of it. It sparks some thought.
well, Jason, you'll love the Creator Portal, and we have a bookshelf feature inside of one of our products right now that I'm going to be testing very soon, which is there's probably 50 podcasts and YouTube channels that I have to pay attention to so that I don't lose our momentum. If there's a new large language model that comes out, I have to be aware of it. If there's a new marketing opportunity, I have to be aware of it. So AI, leadership, coaching, all these things that as a CEO of a growing company, I have to pay attention to. But I don't have time. I don't have 24 hours or 100 hours a day to pay attention to those.
Right.
So the Creator Portal will allow me to set up all the things that I want it to watch for me or listen and it will transcribe every word, and then it will, knowing what I already know and knowing what I need to learn that's new, it will give me a personalized playlist of things that here's a 5-minute clip from this 3-hour podcast.
Right.
Here's a 2-minute video from this 1-hour video. Now, we have to do this in partnership with the content owners, and there will be licensing and royalties and things like that. But the summarization piece is already built. We're just trying to find relationships with producers and creators that want to participate in this really cool, timely, personalized feed. And what you described 10 years ago can be done, or soon will be able to be done with the help of AI.
Yeah.
So that any idea that's mentioned, you're getting the bits and pieces of that. And then if you want to listen to the whole 3 hours and 45 minutes, you can.
Right. Because what I was suggesting was this idea that these are my government representatives, which I go into the portal, I look over here, and there's my representatives, and I want Congressman Darren LaHood is my congressman. Anything was he in the news today? What did he do today? What did he do today? I want to see. So it's not just the official transcripts of in Congress when he was in this committee or whatever, but mentioned by the news. Drawing in those RSS feeds, I think would be. But to follow these people and what did they do today?
And Carlos and I are at Freedom Fest, and we'll be talking to hundreds of organizations here and elsewhere. Yeah. And a lot of organizations produce content and they need distribution for the content. The other thing we're envisioning for our feed is to very clearly and instantly, probably with a color, a background color, or a tile, what came from an official government meeting. Just instantly look at it. You can tell that was an official government transcript or clip. What came from a government document and okay, so that's the government source. What about if we partner with a nonprofit that does really high quality research on the Second Amendment? Well, we'll have a different color for academic, nonprofit, advocacy groups. And people get to choose which sources they subscribe to, but they also see at a glance, this is a commercial entity, this is government, this is nonprofit or academic. We haven't fully fleshed that out, but Google has been pretty tricky sometimes with their keyword search results, because sometimes you can't really instantly see, oh, that's a sponsored ad.
Right.
By law, I think they're required to say sponsored, but they can hide it or move it on the far right or whatever. They adjust it occasionally, or they add more sponsored links than organic links. And so we're not trying to trick people. We just want you to know what's the source and what's the content and how deep do you want to go? And then what action can I take to make my world better? One thing I want to make clear, I'm not a fan of government corruption, waste, and inefficiency or overreach. I'm definitely not. But I think that even though we don't have a democracy, you could argue that we have laboratories of democracy around the country, self-governing boards, school boards with parents and with local communities, like thousands of municipalities. They're all experimenting. So you could say that we have a laboratory. Yes. And the cool thing is there are really bright and wise people that do really good work. They solve this problem. They create this opportunity. They have local policies or programs that work. Imagine being able to find all the things that are good, that do work, and then have people export them across state lines or to different municipalities. We want to get rid of corruption and waste, but we also want us to be proud that we live in a self-governing world. We can participate in participatory government.
Right.
There are millions of selves needed right now at school boards, in city councils. One statistic that blew my mind, one of our investors from Washington, D.C. told me that there are 585,000 elected officials in the United States at the local, state, and federal level. 60% of the races are uncontested.
Right.
We don't even have people that are going to run for the local sheriff. Only one person's willing to do it. I mean, how involved are we? De Tocqueville wouldn't recognize this country today.
Right. I think I heard you provide an example before along those same lines of a local community, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was a nursing home was nearby a school, so you solved multiple problems there. Can you tell that story? Do you remember that one?
Yeah, it was in Texas. I don't remember the city, but there was a retirement home nearby a school. The kids in 3rd and 4th grade were reading way below grade level. and then all these elderly people were lonely, as you would be if you were tucked away in a retirement home. And somebody had the idea of bringing all the elderly people over every week to read with, let the children read to them. And by the end of the year, what I heard was that reading scores just exploded, and all these kids could read much better, and the use of medication in the rest home dropped by like 60%.
Wow.
The elderly people had something to live for. Imagine just going over and letting a fourth grader, you kind of adopting you as a grandma or a grandpa, and then you get to have pride as they learn how to read.
Yeah.
And that's the number one predictor of reading success, is children reading out loud to a adult. And teachers are busy with 30 or 40 kids in their classroom. They can't sit and listen to each child read, and some parents don't do it. So anyway, that was an ingenious idea. And how many places has that spread to in the United States? Probably zero.
Right. They don't have some expensive PR firm to market this thing, package it up, and distribute it out there. But it's going to take us to notice these things. And I've speaking of ideation, I thought about doing Granny Story Hour instead of the alternative that's being really popular at different places around the country. But doing a Granny Story Hour,
I love that.
or even veterans story hour.
Yeah.
Communities
Beautiful
need
idea.
Love
you
it.
You must have ideation too, Jason. You've got to go take the Clifton Strengths, used to be called the Strengths Finder assessment, but go take the Clifton Strengths assessment for $20. You probably do have ideation.
Yeah. In fact, I've invented so many things that already exist. It's phenomenal. I wake up with an idea and then I look it up. I'm like, that's all. I would have done it differently. But however, anyways, that's awesome.
cool.
I'm excited about this. I definitely want to stay in touch and to talk more about this. But I just signed up as a pro account, so now I've got the additional Congress GPT, Supreme Court GPT. Tell me how much history do you have of the Supreme Court in there? Is it all of it, or is it?
I think we got all of the audio recordings since the 50s, and we did a transcription of it. There is a project, I think it's called oyez.org or oyez.com, that also has that same search engine. Eventually, we hope to have the written opinions for every Supreme Court ruling in history.
Right.
So our team is growing. We're going after more historical sources. Carlos Packard joining us gives us access to all of his American history content and constitutional coach content. So you'll see over years, in the coming years, we'll become like Ancestry.com. We'll try to get all the content from all the locations and make it as useful and usable by American citizens and other societies around the world that want transparent, accountable government. They don't have necessarily the same constitutional protections that we do, but there's a lot of people in the world of UK, Ireland, Canada that are coming to us saying, we need a citizen portal for our country too.
Yeah.
So we're definitely open to helping them with that.
That's awesome. That's great. And Ancestry.com, by the way, my mom a number of years ago did a lot of research and found that my paternal line came over in 1628. And so we're coming up on 400 years on this soil. And so
that is amazing. You all need to do a family reunion wherever that ancestor landed. Is it Massachusetts, New Hampshire? Where was it?
Yeah, it was part of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Came in as a Puritan and helped settle like 7 different towns. We found a book in 1872 that kind of tied us into everything prior from that line. And it's just absolutely, I definitely want to head out east and go check that out. Paul, thank you so much. We're going to continue this conversation. This isn't the end of this. This is the beginning. So I appreciate you tremendously.
Well, thanks for all you've been doing for many years, Jason. And if we can take your intelligence and your experience and create an AI lens, then all the things you know could be brought to the attention of millions of fellow citizens, and likewise with other thought leaders too. So thanks. I totally agree with you. This is the beginning of something wonderful.
It's awesome. Thank you so much. CitizenPortal.ai. This segment brought to you by the Remembrance Project, theremembranceproject.org.